we know how the Lubavitcher Rebbe killed Stalin. You know that? Yes? Orly says yes?
I heard.
You've heard vaguely?
But I don't remember now exactly how it was.
Well, you would know the date. I think it was 1953.
Yeah, in Purim, March 5, I think he did.
In Purim of 1953,
Right.
The Rebbe was holding a Fabreinian, a Hasidic gathering. This is very related to Purim. This is a Purim Rebbe story. This is a Purim story, and this is very related to the times we're about. So pay good attention. So it was Purim, and there was always the Fabreinians of Purim were very strong. Purim's a very strong time, very strong energy of amazing things. So at a Hasidic discourse, at a Hasidic Fabreinian, the spiritual highlight of the Fabreinian is the Ma'amar, which means a Hasidic discourse. A Hasidic discourse, generally when a Rebbe speaks, we call that a talk. In Hebrew, we call it a sicha. A sicha means a talk. And a Fabreinian, a gathering, there are talks, interspersed of times when the Hasidim sing and they raise up little cups of vodka to the Rebbe and they catch the Rebbe's eye and they say l'chaim. And then the Rebbe talks and they sing and they raise up these little cups and they say l'chaim. And the spiritual highlight is not a talk. It's called, in English, we call it discourse, just a random word in English we use for it. In Hebrew, we call it a ma'amar, which means a time of very intense godly energy. And when the Rebbe gives a mimer, he sort of looks like he's in a different world. It's not like talking, it's more like a chant. It's just like you feel the flow of words coming out from him as if from a higher source. You could, on YouTube, you could for sure see, the Rebbe saying discourses and you could feel the energy. It's very, very obviously not this world. And at a Fabreinian, always there's one discourse. In Purim 1953, there were two. There was the regular Fabreinian. I mean, a Purim Fabreinian is not a regular Fabreinian, but there was a Purim Fabreinian, there was a discourse. And then at a certain point in the talks, the Rebbe started telling a story. And the story he said was, this was some point after the revolution when everything was topsy-turvy in Russia and they were having elections, whatever. I don't think anything too democratic came out of it, but they were having elections. And the Rebbe at that time, who was the Rebbe Rashab, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, told all of his followers, all of the Hasidim, you have to go vote. So we had a follower who's very pure, holy Jew, which means he knows nothing from this world. And he's going to vote because his Rebbe says to vote. So it's a spiritual thing to do. So he puts on his, he's wearing his kapata and his gartel. What you do when you're doing something very spiritual and holy, because he's doing this very spiritual, holy thing, he goes to the voting place. He has no clue what to do. And all around him, the Russians or Ukrainians were cheering for their candidate. And in Russia, or how they would cheer, which is an exact sounds sort of like in English, but not exactly, is hurrah. Yes? Hurrah, hurrah, hurrah. So he comes and he hears these people chanting hurrah, hurrah, hurrah. Now he doesn't know anything. So he right away thinks hurrah as in two Hebrew words. Hurrah, which means he is evil. Hurrah, he is evil. So they're all chanting around him, hurrah, hurrah, hurrah. And he's like, oh, he is evil. He is evil. Okay. So with a lot of, and this must be what his Rebbe wanted him to come for, to join this chant. He doesn't know what he's doing there. So he's very intently, with a lot of spiritual focus, chanting, he is evil. He is evil. Hoorah, hoorah. And then the Rebbe started chanting that very strongly. Hoorah, hoorah. And all of his followers, all of the Hasidim, didn't know what was going on, but they knew something was going on. And they all joined the chant. And they all chanted like with a lot of spiritual intensity, hoorah, hoorah, hoorah. And then they did this for a long time. And then when they stopped, the Rebbe did something that was the only time in the entire 40 plus years of the Rebbe's leadership he ever did. He went into another Maimon, a Hasidic discourse, which was like, whoa, also like a very strong spiritual energy. And I think how with the truth of Russian media, maybe like a day or so later, it came out in the news that like Stalin has a cold. So all the smart Jews realized that he was dead. And maybe a day or two after that, they came out and they postdated his death to Purim. Purim, which the Hasidim said it was, they think Purim, I don't know if they give an exact time. They don't even know an exact time. He was in his room and they don't know what happened. But the Hasidim say that was the time. That was when the Farbrengen was going on. That was when this chant of Hoorah was going on. And how the Rebbe removed Stalin. And obviously the timing of that was that was when the doctor's plot was going on. When Stalin had this plot to decimate Russian Jewry, to kill out every single Jew in Russia.
Yeah.
And he said he had a very simple plan. They were going to have these, when all the doctors pleaded guilty, under torture, of course, to this plot, these 10 doctors, these 10 Jewish doctors of plotting to kill Stalin, they would release the news and there would be waves of spontaneous pogroms throughout all of Russia that would kill out a third of Russian Jewry. And then beneficently, to save Russian Jewry, they would put them all on these cattle cars without food or water, take them far, far, deep into, very far, which actually they still have this Jewish settlement they created. And they said half the Jews would die in the trip and the half that survived would die in the concentration camps that they said that they built there for them. And they were waiting because one doctor, the woman doctor, still hadn't confessed. They say she was like Esther in the story of Purim, that she's with all the torture, which doesn't make sense. It's beyond human. It's inhumanly impossible to survive all those tortures. And every other doctor broke down and she did not. And because Stalin, he wasn't going to release his plot until every doctor confessed. And she was the last one. And he died. And right away, his advisors did many things, including right away dismantling this whole doctor's plot, releasing the doctors, and removing this decree that was supposed to kill out all the Jews of Russia. So that was Purim.
This woman survived? This woman doctor survived?
Yes, she survived.
So so Rebbe and all of this chanting, was it in America?
Yes. Yes, this was in
It
Brooklyn,
was, I think,
1953. This was in Brooklyn in 770.
So one person was in Russia chanting, or
He was telling a story of what happened, like around the Bolshevik Revolution, of this chassid who chanted "Hoorah, hoorah," and then the Rebbe flowed from that story, and the Rebbe in Brooklyn in 770 started chanting "Hoorah," which again means he is evil, he is evil, he is evil. And then the Rebbe was saying with tremendous intensity and focus, and all the Hasidim understood they should join. There was no cue, they just all realized that. And then the whole 770 is full of all these people not knowing what they're doing, but chanting very strongly, he is evil, he is evil, he is evil. And
I got it.
like 2 or 3 days later came out, that is the day and the time, the rough time they give. They don't know the time. He was in his room alone. They don't know when it happened. So when he was in his room alone is also when the Rebbe was chanting this in Brooklyn, the time of his death. And so that's what the Hasidim say, how what the Rebbe was doing there was killing Stalin. And I'm saying there was tremendous need. Obviously, there's been tremendous need, you could say, for years, but this was really a point where was happened, and it was Purim, and Purim has tremendous spiritual energy. So we should know this tremendous spiritual energy of Purim, and we should use it. So we're talking about Purim. So that was not off topic, though it sounded off topic, but it was not off topic. It was really on topic, not prepared, but it was on topic because obviously there's a lot of crazy stuff going on in our world. And so many levels. So many levels, so much going on. Personal level, global levels, and everything in between. So we really would like to tap into the energy of Purim and really use it. Use it to pray, use it to say psalms, use it to remove any evil decrees that are out there. Now, before I forget, really, I want to say that at the end, but with my brain, I would forget because I was going to say this last week at the end and I forgot. So I'm living with myself for over 50 years. I know my limitations. So I would like to invite everyone to a Purim party, because what better way to celebrate Purim than to rejoice and be together? So Wednesday night, next Wednesday night at 8:15. So all COVID conscious people are hopefully more relaxed by now. You could come with your masks. That is fine. You could come without your mask. That is fine. Whatever you're comfortable with. But and if you're still not comfortable coming, that's fine too, because we respect everyone and everyone has different feelings on this, and that's totally fine. But if you are comfortable coming with or without your mask, we'd be so happy to have you. 8:15, my house, next Wednesday, the night of Purim. We'll have a party. My husband will read the Megillah, and we'll rejoice, and we will utilize that joy to break boundaries. Because joy has a very special power to break boundaries, as we were discussing when we spoke about joy. And we said how your joy below creates joy by God above, and joy breaks boundaries. So God's boundaries are also broken open by our joy. So whatever's limited, whatever boundaries there are, those boundaries should be broken open by joy. So we will try to have that joyous feeling this Purim Wednesday night in my house at 8:15. Everyone's invited. I don't know what I'm serving yet, but there'll be some food. All right. I pretend I said that at the end, but I just would forget if I was going to say it at the end. Yes, Bella?
Potluck?
Yeah, you could bring stuff. I'm always open to other people bringing stuff also, but no, I mean, whatever. I'll pull together something. I'm not worried. Food's never so important. It's people, it's company. That's what's important.
Yeah.
So we want to talk about Purim, and we thank God have 2 weeks to do so, because we, a lot to talk about. But Purim, as we're saying, is an amazing time. Now, there's a law about Purim that says that one who reads the Megillah out of order, or literally retroactively, does not count. There's a lot of laws about hearing the Megillah. It's much more strict than any other reading we do in Judaism. Meaning every Shabbos, if you go to shul, if you go to synagogue, there's a reading of the Torah. And you hopefully like to listen to it, and it's a very holy experience maybe. And if you hear, you hear, and if you don't, you don't. If you miss a word, you miss a word, whatever. Whatever you get is good. And that's a general perspective on most readings, except Purim. By Purim, it is the strictest reading of the entire year. We hear it by night and by day. You have to hear it twice, and you have to hear every single word. So my husband, first time ever, has actually been practicing every single day, because he wants to say it as fast as possible so everyone can hear every word. And like, how long can you keep Jews in a room without talking? So he's down to about 17 and a half minutes. Because he's been doing it every day. He just wants to say it as straight and fast as possible. And you're supposed to listen and hear every single word. And you can't talk in the interim from the beginning of the blessings until the end. And there are many rules about this reading. And one of the rules is that if the reader, obviously if he skipped a word, it's disqualified. Well, let's say the reader read the words backwards. He's trying to go so fast, so he switches 2 words. Disqualified. The whole reading didn't count. Nobody there heard the Megillah. Got to hear it again. If you don't hear a word, you got to hear it again. If you spoke in the middle, you got to hear it again. A lot of rules. So the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement, he said that this rule, this law, which is a law which is applicable today, that if you hear any words out of order, it doesn't count. He said that has a spiritual meaning. Hearing it out of order, again, I'm translating it to the vernacular. Literally, the words are, if you read the Megillah backwards, it doesn't count. So he said reading it backwards means reading it like it's back then, reading it like it's ancient history. If you hear the story of Purim and you think that was a beautiful story that happened a few thousand years ago In ancient Persia, it didn't count. It's not a miracle that happened, about 2,300 years ago. It's current events. It's talking about now. Does any specific, I assume we all more or less know the story. So any elements in the story resonate to you in our current times, which is sort of how we started off? Any parts of the story seem very happening now?
Can we consider the dictator of Russia as threatening Jewish people's existence? Would that be right take on it or not?
I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. Meaning we don't see anything overtly anti-Jewish in what he's doing. It might be anti-decency and morality. So there definitely is threatening people. I don't know if it's anti-Jewish. I know that Bennett, the Prime Minister of Israel, flew to Moscow to speak to Putin, and he said that he was asked to come by Putin. It was a little bit shocking because whatever, some of the details of the trip were not so great, but he said he viewed it as a situation of pikuach nefesh, a situation where lives are at stake, and therefore you have to do anything to help save lives. But I'm saying you could view it as you're saying, as perhaps, I don't know, as an evil that's rearing its head, that's harming and potentially harming many, many people in the world, potentially. Chava?
I would say, like, from slightly different angle, even though we don't see that anything specifically against Jews, but I see how a lot of Jews united, and there's a lot of like Jewish release, help funds.
Yeah.
Like all the Jews around the world, like really feel pain and try to help other Jews to escape and like provide money and all of this. So that's what I see, like when even a potential harm, right? Even there's no decree at this time, right? But we know the history and we know potentially it could happen.
We all have like World War II flashbacks because that's just in our DNA. We all have that feeling.
Right, and so all Jews are so alert and so united and so feel connected to Jews in Ukraine and do a lot of things just to help, like everyone. That's why I see.
That's very beautiful. You're so right. That's such a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful reliving of the Megillah, because as Chava was saying very correctly, by the story, when the Jews were under that gun of genocide, they all united. That's what she's saying, and it's true. That's when they came together. They all united, and they all listened and followed Mordechai's lead, and they all did it together. They all fasted. They all prayed. They all made these public gatherings. There was tremendous unity among all the Jews, which obviously didn't exist before, because before there was a lot of fractions. There was a lot of different groups doing different things. Chava's very right. And I do keep thinking this, that, God, you should look at your children and you should have such nachas that your children love each other so much. I definitely have been feeling that a lot over these past 2 weeks, exactly as Chava was saying. You see all over the world, so many people, I think everyone, each person in their own way, praying and donating and praying and donating and doing whatever they can. I had a few of my alumni are emissaries of Chabad in the Ukraine. So it was personally very painful. You know, each of them did get out. And just envisioning like these people running away with like 10 children, and it was
Yeah.
so sad, so horrible. And it definitely had this like Holocaust feeling to it.
Yeah.
You know?
Scary 21st century.
Yes, very, very horrible feeling. And I do, yes, and it's amazing. Like, see, my husband was playing something yesterday in Israel. So this is modern secular Israel. I guess they have the, I don't know what it was, I don't know what, TV, radio, I don't know what it was. The Israelis vote on like the man of the day, like the hero of the day. And yesterday the hero was a Chabad emissary who left Ukraine with his family, was taking them to Israel, and was approached by the Jewish community in Amsterdam, where a number of refugees had gone, and they're like, please come and help because we can't communicate with these people. We want to help them. We can't even, we don't, there's no common language here. And so he dropped his family off in Israel, and he turned around and flew to Amsterdam to be there for those Jews. And so these completely secular Jews, completely, you know, no connection to anything, and anything religious, and they were in such awe because of that sense of brotherhood. Or you see these pictures of like these orphanages going to Israel, going to Berlin, and yeah, there's definitely that sense of like, Yochai was right. That's true. That's a very strong parallel image of the unity of the Jews, and that unity should be enough to break barriers. Whether there's any negative energy, that unity should break those barriers, because there is such unity and so many people working so hard just to help someone else. Absolutely. Anyone else have any other things? Rachel?
I don't know if it's relevant, but I heard something today about that. And it comes to my mind that the situation before it all started, I can compare it to Jews having fast at that time, this non-kosher fast, participated in that. And it comes to mind that a lot of Jews live like that.
And you're saying that the transgression, that's interesting, that maybe we fell into the same wrong that they did.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the first time we really see assimilation from the beginning of the Jewish people by the giving of the Torah. The first real assimilation happened right before the story of Purim, because the Jews were in Israel, surrounded by very hostile nations. So there wasn't really that much assimilation going on. And then the Jews, you know, got stronger, and they had their own nation. And also, even the Jews that did wrong, it's sort of hard for us to understand, because some of the Jews were served idols. But even if they served idols, they somehow served idols and still believed in God. And like sort of, they went back and forth between the idol and God and serving God. So none of these Jews really left Judaism. They just added this totally forbidden component of idolatry. And then when the first temple was destroyed after 410 years, and the Jews are dragged into exile in Babylonia, this is the first time the Jews are really mingling and living within another nation. Meaning, from when we became a nation, from when we got the Torah, we were always just ourselves, separate from all the other nations. The nations around us didn't like us and didn't really have much traffic to do with us. You know, either it was a war or maybe some merchants, but like that was it. So the Jews were very insular, and therefore really maintained their Jewish identity and their religious identity very strongly. Even as they did wrong things, they were in general on a very high level, and they were really serving God very strongly. And then when they went to Babylonia, suddenly now they're within another whole culture. And the Babylonians liked us after they destroyed our temple and dragged us into exile and chains. But once we got there, like something shifted, and they liked us. As you might remember, we discussed this in Jewish history. They said, oh, we're a Semitic people, you're a Semitic people, we're all brothers. This is a very comfortable land. Come, you can plant your date trees. You'll make a lot of money. Life is good here. Enjoy. And that was where assimilation started. It's sort of interesting, sort of jumping ahead. I wasn't going to discuss it now, but Rachel mentioned, why were the Jews punished? So the decree, our sages say, was because, as Rachel mentioned, they ate from the party of Ahasuerus, meaning all the Babylonian leaders, which the Babylonian Empire flowed into the Persian Median Empire, they all were very nervous about something, which was, when are the Jews going to be taken back? When is the temple going to be rebuilt? You think, what do they care? We're this, small group of people, downtrodden, but they didn't look at us like that. The world never does. The world's always very conscious of us and very weary of us, leery of us. So they all knew, all of these Babylonian, Persian, Median kings knew that there was a prophecy by Yirmiyah, by Jeremiah. And they all respected Yirmiyah because he had been prophesying for years that the temple was going to be destroyed by the Babylonians, as happened. So they knew he was a real prophet. And he prophesied that the Jews will be in exile for 70 years. You remember, we discussed this in Jewish history. So Nebuchadnezzar made his calculation of 70 years. His grandson Belshazzar made his, Nebuchadnezzar had a son, Evil-Merodach, who ruled for a very short amount of time, who was actually very good to the Jews. And Evil-Merodach had a son, Belshazzar. And Belshazzar, who was a very evil person and the father of Vashti, Ahasuerus' father-in-law, he made his calculation of 70 years. And the night he thought the 70 years were over, he made this massive party. And that's, if you know the story, when there was a handwriting on the wall. And that night, Babylonia fell. The Babylonian kingdom fell, and the Persian kingdom took over. The Persian Median kingdom took over with Cyprus. So similarly, Ahasuerus also made this calculation. He knew it was real. They all knew it was real. They all feared the God of the Jews, and they knew that God was going to take the Jews out after 70 years. So just as Nebuchadnezzar miscalculated 70 years and Belshazzar miscalculated 70 years, Ahasuerus also miscalculated 70 years. Because Yirmiyah was correct. And exactly 70 years later, the Jews were redeemed, but they just didn't know where to count the 70 years from. So when Ahasuerus, his miscount was over and he celebrated, he's like, oh, wow, we've reached the 70 years and the Jews are still here in our Persian Empire. And he made a massive party that basically lasted for a year. At the end of this year-long gluttonous feast of food and drinking and tons of immorality, he added an extra week-long party for the people of Shushan, of his capital. Our sages explain that party, that week-long party, was a deliberate design plotted by Ahasuerus and Haman to bring the Jews to sin. Because even though he had just celebrated for almost a year that the Jews were not redeemed after 70 years, he still was nervous. He still knew the God of the Jews was very powerful. And he still hated the Jews and hated their God. And he didn't want the God of the Jews to take the Jews out and rebuild the temple. So he and Haman came up with a very simple plot. Let's get them to sin. Once they sin, their God will no longer protect them. And then for sure, we're done. Great. How are we going to get them to sin? Invite them to the party. And coming to the party, and of course, we'll officially tell them the food's kosher, but there'll be lots of non-kosher, tempting food that they'll eat. And we'll tell them they could drink kosher wine, but there'll be lots of non-kosher, tempting wine for them to drink. And they'll sin, and God will be very mad at them. And then we're done. And more or less, that's what happened. Hasidus explains it a little more deeply and says that when the Jews were invited to the party, of course, the leader of the Jews, Mordechai, said, don't go. Don't go. We're not allowed to go to a party of Ahasuerus. Who knows what immorality is going there? Who knows what's going on? I mean, we're not allowed, even if you say you're only going to eat kosher food and drink, you're not allowed to eat kosher food and drink in a non-kosher party. That's a law that applies till today. You can't go to a non-kosher party, but just with your kosher food and drink. You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to go there. And some of the Jews listened and didn't go. And most of the Jews didn't listen and went. And they said, but Mordechai, you don't understand. You're just too simple and naive to get it. This means the king likes us. He's inviting us. He's inviting all the residents of Shushan and also the Jews. We're equal. He thinks we're like everyone else. They didn't know that actually the whole party was because of them. They had it backwards. They thought Mordecai had it backwards. They had it backwards. They're like we're like everyone else. The king likes us. That's very important. We got to keep up his good relations. If we don't go to the party, he's going to be all insulted. He's not going to like us. We could get in trouble if we go to the party. So don't worry, Mordecai. We won't drink and eat. We'll only drink and eat the kosher wine. We won't drink the wine. We'll just eat the food. Everyone made their own calculations how they could kosherize it. But this is really important. We need the king's protection. This is like helping world Jewry. We got to do it for the world, for Jews. So they didn't listen to him and they went. And then as a result, it says that God, as we understand it, God punished them with Haman's decree of wiping out every single Jew in one day, complete genocide. So, but this seems so strange because the Jews sinned and they messed up, and you're not allowed to go to such party, and you're not allowed to go to a not kosher party and with your own little kosher food, and not allowed to do any of that. But still, that doesn't mean you should all be wiped out in one day. It doesn't mean every Jewish man, woman, and children should die because of that. So what's going on? So the Bible explains that God, one of the ways God works, as we bring out in many situations, is what's called measure for measure. As you behave, that's how he responds. Like if we are kind to others, God shows kindness to us. If we're judgmental on others, then we're passing judgment on ourselves, measure for measure. So here the Jews are basically creating a message. The message being, God, we're okay. What's really important is that Ahasuerus likes us. So we're going to leave your protection because, we're not doing what you want. We're going to go under Ahasuerus' protection because that's what's going to save us. That's really important. And God said, oh, really? Fine. No. Until now you were protected because I was protecting you. But now you say, forget about those antiquated laws and you're not supposed to go to a non-kosher party. You're not supposed to party like this. You're not supposed to drink wine with the Gentiles like this. You're not allowed to do all of this stuff. You're saying my protection is not really important to you. What's important is Ahasuerus' protection. No problem. I'll take away my protection and see how good Ahasuerus is to you. So God removed that protection he had over us. And this allowed Haman and Ahasuerus to plot to completely destroy us. So what Rachel is saying is that assimilation and that turning and viewing people as our protection. Oh, Ahasuerus likes us. Okay, now we're safe. That to her is sort of reminiscent, maybe, possibly, of this idea of what we could have stumbled in now. And this is there's maybe we don't know, but trying to apply this to ourselves. Do you ever fall into this trap of thinking people help you? And if this person's going to help you, then it's going to be good. And if they're not going to help you, it's not going to work. Any of you ever find yourselves falling into that trap? I need this person. And if this person helps me, this colleague, this boss, this job, this doctor, this real estate agent, each person, depending on what their issues are, then I'm safe. I'll be okay. But if I don't have this person on my side, then I don't think it's going to work out. Yeah? Anyone ever fall into that trap? You can raise your virtual hand. I definitely think sometimes I do. Anyone else sometimes finds themselves believing in people too much and trusting people too much and thinking people are going to help them too much as the source of their protection? Just me and Chav, and none of the rest of you have that problem? That's pretty awesome. So we can take down our hands. Do you find yourself feeling safe when only God can protect you? When you're in a situation where there's nobody that can help you, or nobody that could help you is helping you, or nobody really can help you, and it's only God that you can rely on? I'm sure we all have found ourselves in such situations in our life. Do you feel safe in that situation, or does it? Yes, you can raise your hand or thumbs. Yes, you do feel safe. No, it feels a little precarious when there's nothing human that's around to support you and you're just trusting God.
I would say try to have it more in myself, to feel more like that.
You would try to more feel, try to help, try to more feel safe when you know it's only God who's able to protect you in this situation.
I remind myself about it more often. And, you know, we all, I think, slowly moving in the right direction. So there is always room for improvement. And I'm sure that used to be different, but now I'm more and more, it comes to mind. It all depends on God only.
Right. I mean, you know, it's a challenge for everyone. I had someone reach out to me tonight. She's so scared, nuclear war. And I said, this is God's world. Like, you know, God's not destroying his world. This is his world. Oh, but I'm like, you just have to believe in God. It's God's world. Basic 101. You know, the most basic fundamental concepts. This is God. This is only God. There is nothing but God. And he loves us. He's not destroying his world. He's not destroying us. Puts us through the ringer sometimes. He's not destroying us. And that's it. So we all know it. I need to remember it. I need to hear it. I need to think about it. And I need to think about it again. I need to think about it again to really feel safe and secure. And when only God is on your side, you're in the best position in the world. All right, so that was a little bit of a detour because of Rachel's point. Getting back to what we were going to talk about. So the Baal Shem Tov said that if you read the Megillah, if you hear the story of Purim and you view it as ancient history, a very beautiful story, a very inspiring story, a long time ago, 2,300 some years ago, then no, you didn't fulfill your obligation. We have to view it as current. And Rivka gave her perspective on current, and Chava gave hers, and Rachel gave hers. And there are many, and I'm sure every single person here can see from many different vantage points the reflections in our current lives, not only what's going on in Ukraine, but obviously that's a very big thing going on in our world this moment. So it makes sense that our minds and hearts are going in that direction to the current reality of the story of Purim. Now, if we think about the word Purim, it's actually a little bit unusual because Purim is not a Hebrew word. It's a word used in the Megillah, but the Megillah is translating a Persian word. Purim is a Persian word, and as the Megillah translates into Hebrew, because Megillah is written in Hebrew, Purim means a lot, a pour. As it says in the Megillah, the storyline of Purim that we know, the pour, this is the goral. Goral is Hebrew for lot. Pour is Persian for lot. So we have this very, I guess, very important incident in the whole story, because it's the name of the whole story, the name of the whole holiday, is on the lot. The lot means when Haman concocted this great plot to destroy the Jews, he wanted to figure out when's the best time to do it. So he put all the months like in a basket or in a hat, and he picked them out to see which he would pick out. And each month that he picked out, that's going to be the month he's going to destroy the Jews. But since Haman was obviously very evil and therefore obviously very dishonest, he was even dishonest with himself. So he's picking lots, and then each lot he picked, he rejected. Because he picked Nisan, he said, no, that was the time when the Jews left Egypt. No way, that's way too powerful. Pick again. Oh, Sivan, no, that's when the Jews got the Torah. No way. And thus he picked month after month after month after month of the entire year until there was only one lot left. The last month of the year, Adar. And he picked it up and he said, what a great lot, Adar. Adar has no merit. There's nothing great that happened for the Jews in Adar. It's Mazal. Every month has an astrological sign connected to it, what we call the Mazal of the month. It used to be, before the Great Flood, that every month the stars would converge into a certain form. And that form was the Mazal, what we call the astrological sign of that month. After the Great Flood, when everything got confused, dearranged, so the stars no longer did that, and they did no longer form this clear picture in the sky, as literally happened to the world before the Great Flood. So based on the form the stars made originally prior to the flood, that's the Mazal, that's the energy of each month. And Adar's, the stars formed a fish. So that was the Mazal of Adar is a fish. So he said, oh, great. I picked a lot myself. I also picked another 11 that I rejected, but we won't talk about that. I picked this myself. Adar, perfect month that has no good things happen to the Jews in Adar. They have no great merit. And its Mazal is a fish. What's a fish? A fish is nothing. A fish is something you swallow up. And their savior died in Adar. Moses, their savior, died in Adar. What a perfect month to destroy the Jews. That was the lot. We'll speak later, probably next week, a little bit more about this lot and its significance and the idea of Moses dying in this month.
Why didn't he pick Av? I mean, it's good for us, but I'm just curious.
At that time, he was not thinking of Av. He did pick Av, and yet somehow, that's actually such a good question, Fega, because for some reason the Medrash, and I don't remember it, goes through all the months, and each month he found something good that the Jews did in that month that he said would negate his plot. And now you're asking, what good did he find in Av? When we know Av, of course, is a very sad month, the destruction of the temple. The temple was already destroyed at this point. The first temple was destroyed. I don't remember. I don't know if I ever read every line of that Medrash, but for some reason, and that's a really good question, because of course God wanted him to pick Adar, because actually, as we might or might not get to today, the merit of Adar was Moses, was Moshe, because Moshe not only died in Adar, he was born in Adar. And that merit of his birth in Adar, our sages say, is actually what created the miracle. From that very spiritual sense, created the miracle of Purim. Of course, the Jews also repented and turned to God, and Mordechai did a lot of great stuff, and Esther did a lot of great stuff, but Moses's merit also did a lot of great stuff. And the sages really view Purim as coming from Moses's merit. So I don't remember what good thing he attributed to Av. That's a very good point, Fega. But I guess whatever God put in his head, because God wanted him to pick Adar, because this no merit month actually had a tremendous merit that actually was part of the catalyst for the salvation. It's interesting because, God was so involved in the story, and maybe this is maybe this is another modern day application. You don't even see his name mentioned at all. It's a trick question. If someone says to you, how many times is God's name mentioned in the Megillah? The answer is 0. The sages wrote the Megillah. They didn't write God's name once, deliberately, because they were expressing the energy of what happened then, because God was completely concealed. He was involved in everything. As I'm saying, this whole craziness on Haman's part to pick Adar. Oh, no merit, Moses died. How did he know Moses died and he forgot that Moses was born then? Whatever. And even the death of the passing of a tzaddik is a great day for the Jewish people, let alone it was also the day of his birth. So the whole thing was a clear setup from God. And Esther being taken to the palace, which seemed such a travesty. And it was God's already creating the salvation before the decree was instituted. And so many, 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 many details are all such deliberate design, and God's name isn't mentioned once. That's sort of the reason why Purim is the holiday when we wear costumes. And it's interesting, it's not like the Jews were trying to copy a non-Jewish holiday when you get dressed up in costume. This is deliberately a time of costumes because the whole story is a bunch of costumes, because God is wearing the ultimate costume. And that was going on. So God's name isn't mentioned at all, and God's there in every single detail. And we're picking this Persian word for this lot. A lot means something so aberrant, something that, you just pick a lot. You don't understand there's nothing understandable in it. And yet that is the name of the holiday. And of course, there's many, many, many reasons why we're using a Persian word. If you want to call the holiday lots, call it Gorelos. That's how you say lots in Hebrew. Gorelos sounds weird. Purim sounds normal. It only sounds normal because we've been calling it Purim for 2,500 years. But if we were calling it Gorelos for 2,500 years, trust me, that would sound very normal to us. But no, we for some reason want to call it lots, and we use a Persian word, and we want a Megillah where God's name isn't mentioned at all. So the sages are trying to teach us something very deep by all of this. A lot symbolizes, drawing this lot, this random picking, symbolizes a situation when you are not using your brain. You are not using your intellect. You are not using reason. You don't rationalize something by picking a lot. Picking a lot means, I don't know what to do here. So whatever comes out. And of course, not using reason often is sub-rational. But in Judaism, not using reason can also be super rational. It also could be higher than reason. And that's what the Jews were forced to do and did in this holiday, in this story. Because if you think about it, the response of Mordechai and Esther was very bizarre. Here's Esther. She's the queen, right? It took years of beauty contests to pick her. She's the queen. When she was the queen, the whole country, which means the whole world, got a lessening of the taxes. There was another round of loads of parties. She's the queen he's been searching for years. So you think, oh, there's this decree on world jewelry. Well, Ahasuerus doesn't know that his amazing beloved wife's a Jew. Let her go. Let her be really sweet and feminine and charming and beautiful, and mention that she's a Jew, by the way, and her people are now under this attack. And could he please change the decree? That would be so nice of him. And instead, Mordechai and Esther say, we're going to fast for 3 days. Esther says, I'm fasting for 3 days. Do you know what someone looks like after a 3-day fast? She went to the king looking like so bad, you can't imagine. And as she herself said, it makes no sense to go to the king. I've got a year. This was in Nisan. The decree to wipe out all the Jews is 11 months later in Adar. We have the whole Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz, Av, Elul, Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev, Tevet, Shvat, Adar. We have literally almost 12 months to deal with this. We have 11 and a half months away. So I'm going to go to the king, and according to the very, very humane civilized laws of Persia, if anyone comes to the king without his requesting their presence, they get killed on the spot. Why would I do that? Vashti was a little bit chutzpahdik, and he took off her head. He freely takes off many people's heads. I've got 11 and a half months for him to remember me, for him to want to be with me. I can be beautiful and charming and appeal to his mercies. No. We're not doing it that way. That's rational. That's not how this is going to work. You're going to fast for 3 days. You're going to look horrible. You're going to go into the antechamber that you're totally forbidden to go into, where your head's supposed to get chopped off for daring to walk into that room without being called. And that's how we're going to save the Jews. But that makes no sense. Yeah, that was part of the point. Part of the point was exactly that it made no sense. That it was not the smart way to do it. Because again, when you do it the smart way, we say, I have 11 and a half months. I'll wait till he calls me. I'll look especially gorgeous. I'll get some new jewelry, some awesome perfume. I'll be charming. I'll be sweet. You're losing God. That's not about this. This is not about smart diplomacy. This is about putting all that on the side and going for God where it makes no sense. And that is what this lot symbolizes. Drawing this lot symbolizes doing things that make no sense. And sometimes, now of course the lot was Haman, and that was the evil side of making no sense. But on a godly level, we sometimes need to really put him first and recognize and live exactly what we said before, that salvation is God. There's nothing else. We work with nature a little bit because God wants us to, but we don't believe in it. We don't intensify it. We don't focus on it. No. Because that's not where salvation is coming from. Salvation is coming from God. So by spending 3 days fasting, I'm saying, God, I know it's about you. I'm not spending 3 days looking gorgeous, getting the best outfits, getting the perfume, I'm spending 3 days fasting and in prayer and in Psalms, because that's what's going to save the Jews, not how beautiful I look, not how I can coax or seduce or charm. That's not going to bring the salvation. That's all nature. God, you're bringing the salvation. And that's what I have to prioritize. Again, think of, like Rachel brought out, what the Jews did wrong. The Jews did wrong, this idea of like, oh, if Ahasuerus likes us, we're safe. God said, oh, really? Well, we'll see about that. So if she had waited to be called and had the most beautiful dress, she'd be doing the same thing the Jews did by eating at the party. She'd be thinking that makes a difference if Ahasuerus likes her. She'd be thinking Ahasuerus is the power. He's going to be the one that determines the fate of the Jews. Ahasuerus isn't determining the fate of the Jews. God is. Ahasuerus wanting her, liking her, being charmed by her is not one drop determining the fate of the Jews. God is determining the fate of the Jews, which has a lot of modern relevance. Because again, if we're looking at the world and we're fearful or worried or concerned or whatever specific flavor you choose to have, don't fall in the trap of the Jews by Purim time. That was their mistake, like Rachel brought out, thinking that the world has a power. Oh, if Ahasuerus likes us, we're good. If Ahasuerus doesn't like us, we're not good. Oh, no. The power is God. He is the only power. He's the absolute power. And when you do it God's way, you're protected. The world is protected. All the Jews are protected. So we don't have to overemphasize listening to the news, which is a very depressing channel. Listening to the news, thinking about the news, worrying about the news. No human has any power. Just like by the story of Purim. People don't have power. God's the only power. And by the lot, that super rational behavior is emphasizing this. Don't be so rational. Don't work it out, the best strategy, the best this, the best that. And again, we could do it in anything in our life. We don't only have to do it if we're determining, global politics. In our own world, the best strategy to get ahead at my job, the best strategy to find the best doctor, the best strategy to, invest my stocks, whatever it is. We use nature loosely and we believe in God. And that's what the Jews had to learn Purim. Don't strategize. That's what you did. That's why you ate at that party. Don't go down that road. Believe in God and be irrational. Have Esther fast for 3 days, because then she's turned to God for 3 days and then let her go to Ahasuerus. And yes, he should have chopped off her head, but God didn't let. And yes, he shouldn't have listened to her, but God didn't yet. And yes, officially, he and Haman were buddies, but God worked it all out. That one moment, he had this deranged, absolute desire to kill Haman, and that's all it took in those days. That one moment, and Haman's gone. Not that was the end of the story, of course, but it was a pivotal moment in the story. So that's why the sages call our whole holiday lots, to emphasize that point. And again, We don't want to read the Megillah like ancient history. It's very much our reality. And we want to really know in our reality that the only power is God. And that's very good. That's a very safe power. And as we turn to God and prioritize God, that's what draws down the blessing. So Esther didn't look beautiful. She looked horrible. Her beauty wasn't going to draw down the blessings. God was going to draw down the blessings. She didn't wait to be called. She went unannounced, putting her life on the line, because that self-sacrifice, that putting God first, was going to bring down the blessings. And that's why the name of the holiday is in Persian. We don't call it, okay, our sages want us to understand the lot and irrational and put God first and don't be so normal, be God-oriented. So call it Gorbalos. That's how you say lots in Hebrew. No, our sages want to call it in Persian. That's why they called it Purim. The lots of Persia, because they're saying it's not like, all right, when you're in a religious mode, in your prayer, in your service, in your charity, in your Torah study. No, when you're speaking Persian, when you're speaking the secular language, when you're dealing with a secular world, when you're dealing with the politics of the secular world, that's where you have to remember to be irrational. Not only in the study hall, not only in the synagogue, there too, but also as Mordecai and Esther were in the palace. When you're speaking only Persian, they don't understand Hebrew. You have to be equally irrational. You have to equally put God first. And that's what creates the salvation. And when you slip up, like Rachel mentioned before, that's the eating from the parties. That's the wrong priority. That's thinking the world's going to be the salvation. The world's not going to be the salvation. Not then and not now. The salvation is only from God. So, a little over time, so I could go on and on this, but I'm not going to. I'll stop at this moment, but I think it's so strong how we can take this message and, again, not think of it as that 2,300 year ago story, but as current events, and really pull from the story to know what to do, to be calm, to be God-centered, to know humans don't run the world. They never did. They never will. To be very, very trusting, very much putting our priorities, not in looking beautiful in the 3-day fast, not in the human efforts, do a little human efforts, but in the God efforts, and to be calm and trusting. I keep asking God, not just that every Jew there should be safe. I'm sure they are safe. I'm sure they're taken care of, but that they should know they're safe. They should know they're safe. They should feel safe. Because even if they are safe, if they don't feel safe, it's still a very hard situation, very traumatic situation to go through. But God, every Jew in this world should be safe. And you should be there for every single one. And when it's obvious to us that he's pulling the strings, and when it doesn't seem like that at all, again, it's just like the Megillah. Again, we don't want to view it as ancient history. Megillah, you could think it all was a series of cool coincidences, or you understood it was God. And the same thing nowadays. And if we know it's God, then when it looks exactly how we want, and when it looks nothing like what we want, we know it's God. All right, we will stop at this point. To be continued next week. Now I'm remembering, since I said it before, now I remember to invite everyone to the Purim party a week from this coming Wednesday at my house next Wednesday, 8:15. Please come with a partner, a spouse, come with someone else. And we're so happy to have everyone and to celebrate whoever feels safe to come. And we're so happy that hopefully many of you, God willing, will. Thank you so much. To be continued next week.